She goes right on.
Mhm.
All right. All right, here we go. Bear with me for a moment. Okay. All right. Right. Okay, let me get this out of the background here. All right.
No, that's good background.
Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, all of our brothers and sisters in Yahuwah Almighty, Yahushua Messiah. We are the Wakened by Yahuwah Fellowship, and we are going to be going into a study tonight dealing with all the commandments regarding cleanness and uncleanness. And we're going to see the context of all this stuff because there's a lot of confusion in the body of Messiah right now. And we're going to be showing how Yahuwah makes a distinction between ceremonial uncleanness and uncleanness referring to sin. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with that as well. Okay, so we're going to be going. Let's see here. I think we'll start off one of my favorite chapters of the Torah here, Leviticus 11. So we're going to deal with, this is one of the ways we can become unclean. Okay. Leviticus 11, I'll read from the Breton's English translation of the Septuagint here. Let me jump down to where it actually talks about touching the dead bodies and all that. Okay, so let's see here. I think it starts at verse 27. See here, maybe start at verse 26. And whichever among the beasts divides the hoof and makes claws and does not chew the cud shall be unclean to you. Everyone that touches their dead bodies, and notice how it says their dead bodies, not every dead body, okay, shall be unclean till evening. Very key here. Their dead bodies. Go ahead, Brother Joshua. Oh, that's right. I got to update my screen. My bad. Yeah, let me see here. Screen, shared screen sound. Just thank you, Brother Joshua, for reminding me of that. So, yeah, Leviticus 11:26 literally says, everyone that touches their dead bodies, referring to unclean animals or unclean insects or fish or birds, that touching their dead bodies will make them unclean till evening. So it's very key there. Okay. Everyone among all the wild beasts that moves upon his 4 feet, which goes on 4, is unclean to you. Everyone that touches their dead bodies shall be unclean till evening. So Yahuwah reiterates there. And he that takes of their dead bodies shall wash his garments and shall be unclean till evening. These are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you of the reptiles upon the earth, the weasel, the mouse, the lizard, the ferret, the chameleon, the evid, the newt, the mote. These are unclean to you of all the reptiles which are on the earth. Everyone who touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening. And whosoever one of their dead bodies shall fall, it shall be unclean. Whatever wooden vessel or garment or skin sack it may be, every vessel in which work should be done shall be dipped in water and shall be unclean till evening. Then it shall be clean. And every earthen vessel, which one of these things shall fall, whatsoever is inside it shall be unclean and shall be broken. And all food that is eaten on which the water shall come from such a vessel shall be unclean, and every beverage which is drunk in any such vessel shall be unclean. And everything on which there shall fall on their dead bodies shall be unclean. Ovens and stands for jars shall be broken down. These are unclean, and they shall be unclean to you. Now, again, this is where history benefits us, because what we call ovens today, they would not call ovens, okay? So back then, an oven is like a fire pot. It's like a clay vessel that, they would cook stuff in. It's like a earthen, dirt type of vessel that they would cook stuff in. So this is not talking about modern stoves or ovens. So that's something to keep in context there, that Even though in the English it says oven, if you look in the Greek and the Hebrew, it's referring to a fire pot. Yeah, so to explain what I mean here, yes, if a fly, like say a fly is dying, right? Okay, so say a fly dies on a wooden table. Obviously, a wooden table is too big to dump in water. You would basically like wash it. You would like, I guess, take a wet rag, get some water in the wet rag, and wash it, and then it would be unclean till evening. Under most circumstances, the best way to avoid becoming unclean by touching something like a dead insect would be, to take something like a napkin, paper towel, rag, something, and kill it that way and throw it out. That's the best way to do it. I've learned from experience because where we live here, there people unfortunately are not that sanitary. You got flies coming in the apartment buildings like crazy. So me and my mom have learned from experience how to deal with that. So yeah, I agree. It would be a better translation to say it would be carry or bear them. Yeah, I agree. So verse 35, back to verse 35 here, it says, everything on which there shall fall of their dead bodies shall be unclean. Ovens, like I said, are talking about fire pots, and stands for jars. Those stands for jars back in the day were like clay. Okay, shall be broken down. These are unclean. They shall be unclean to you. And again, the wooden vessels, and just to clarify, I don't even think the wooden vessels would be referring to a wooden table. The wooden vessels, in my opinion, in the context of this chapter, is talking about cups, bowls, small things. It would have to be something small enough to actually dump in water and to fully wash in water. So obviously the wooden things it's talking about would be like, cups, bowls, plates, any little wooden materials that its carcass would have touched. Leviticus 11, verse 36, only if the water be of fountains of water or a pool or continuance of water, it shall be clean, but he that touches their carcasses shall be unclean. And if one of their carcasses should fall upon any sowing seed, it shall be sown, it shall be clean. But if water be poured on any seed, and one of their dead bodies shall fall upon it, it is unclean unto you. And if one of the cattle die, which is lawful for you to eat, he that touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening. So it's talking about, so basically, if a cattle falls and dies. Now, this obviously is talking about something that dies of itself. This is where people get the idea that anything you eat any type of meat, you're unclean till evening. That's not the case. If we read this verse in context, it's talking about a cattle that's dying of itself. It's dying of disease. It's dying of itself. Obviously, it's not talking about cattle in general that would, if you kill it for food, that you're unclean till evening. That's obviously the context here. It's talking about an animal that dies of itself. Anyway, so it says, any if one of the cattle die, which is lawful for you to eat, he that touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening. And he that eats of their carcasses shall wash his garments and be unclean till evening. And he that carries away any of their carcasses shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water and be unclean till evening. And every reptile that creeps on the earth, this shall be an abomination to you, it shall not be eaten. And every animal that creeps on its belly, every one that goes on 4 feet continually, which abounds with feet among all the reptiles creeping on the earth, you shall not eat it, for it is an abomination to you. You shall not defile your souls with any of the reptiles that creep upon the earth, and you shall not be polluted with them. You shall not be unclean by them. For I am Yahuwah your Elohim, you shall be set apart. You shall be set apart, and you shall be set apart, because I, Yahuwah your Elohim, am set apart, and you shall not defile your souls with any of the reptiles creeping upon the earth. For I am Yahuwah who brought you up out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim. You shall be set apart, for I, Yahuwah, am set apart. This is the law concerning beasts and birds and every living creature moving in the water, every living creature creeping on the earth, to distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between those that bring forth alive, such as should be eaten, those that bring forth alive, such as should not be eaten. Okay, so that's the end of that bullet point there. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go to the next bullet point here. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
So if just killing an animal, like a clean animal, and eating it, like it makes it unclean, that makes you unclean, that means you have all the Levitical priests, like offering unto Yahuwah and eating of the offerings in their uncleanness. That makes no sense.
Yeah. And even worse, you would have every person that eats the Passover lamb on Passover, they would be unclean on a night they're not supposed to be unclean. Because that, from what I remember, that's the only direct command where it says you cannot become ceremonially unclean on that feast. The other feasts, I don't see that, but it seems like Passover definitely. When you look at Numbers, what chapter is that again? I think it's chapter 8 or chapter 10. Thank you. Chapter 10 says that they were unclean, so they were not able to keep the Passover. They were ceremonially unclean. So, yeah, if you go with that interpretation that some people have, that you say you eat a steak, you're unclean now, and you got to bathe in water. That would mean that all the sacrifices of the night of Passover are added on top of the actual Passover meal. In Deuteronomy 16, when sacrifices are added to the night of Passover, the sheep and the oxen, that would mean everyone that's eating of those sacrifices, every Levitical priest would have to bathe in water. They would be unclean at evening, which makes no sense because Numbers 10 says they have to be clean to keep the Passover. So, yeah, that falls apart, that type of interpretation. That doesn't make any sense. So that's the reason I wanted to bring that up, was because I know certain people have certain interpretations like that, and they think you have to bathe in water every time that you have that you eat meat in general and all that. So I just wanted to expound on that, why I don't believe that's the case at all. So we're going to go on to another verse that talks about the context of why would you be unclean by touching a clean animal. We'll see the context here. Another cross-reference here is Leviticus 22, verse 8, which literally says, do not eat an animal that dies of itself or is torn. So again, they are not allowed to eat of an animal that dies of itself or is torn. And you can also find this in Exodus 22, verse 31. Now, to go on to another law of uncleanness here, now we're going to about purification for women after childbirth. And this is important because this shows that for our sisters here, this is something they got to be aware of. So Leviticus chapter 12. So we're going to go to Leviticus 12. All right. Let's see here. Leviticus 12. Go to eSword here. I'm going to stick with the Septuagint here. Purification after childbirth. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharel, and you shall say to them, whatsoever woman shall have conceived and born a male child shall be unclean 7 days. She shall be unclean according to the days of separation for her monthly courses. And on the 8th day she shall circumcise the flesh of his foreskin. And for 33 days she shall continue in her unclean blood. She shall touch nothing set apart, meaning she can't go into the temple, basically. She can't touch none of the vessels that's in the tabernacle or the temple, so on and so forth. And shall not enter the set apart place until the days of her purification be fulfilled. But if she should have borne a female child, then she shall be unclean twice 7 days, according to the time of her monthly courses. And for 66 days shall she remain in her unclean blood. And when the days of her purification shall have been fulfilled, for a son or a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of a year old, without blemish, for a whole burnt offering, a young pigeon or turtle dove for a sin offering, to the door of the tabernacle of witness to the priest. And he shall present it before Yahuwah, and the priest shall make atonement for her, and shall purge her for the fountain of her blood. And this is the law of her who bears a male or female. Now, I wanted to make a note here, since it's talking about atonement, right? We are in a Melchizedek priesthood, number one. Number two, we're in the new covenant. In the new covenant, Yahusha's blood atones for all sins. So how would our sisters apply this today? Once it gets to the sacrificial part, they really can't. They obviously would have to trust in Yahusha's sacrifice in his blood to purify them, not just to atone for their sins, but purify them from this time of uncleanness. Okay. And again, their monthly period does not mean they sinned. So I just want to make a distinction here. This is where it gets confusing for people when they see, we've been taught in Christianity whenever we see unclean that it means sin. That's not the case. So just want to make a distinction there, okay? And if she cannot afford a lamb, then shall she take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a whole burnt offering and one for a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for her, and she shall be purified. So again, Yahusha is the atonement of our sins. So our sisters, all they really have to worry about is the time of their separation. That's the only thing they can really keep. They're not supposed to touch anything set apart. Again, there's no set apart place. I don't think there's any way they could be defiled by that, because there is no temple at this point in time. So there's no way to really keep that either. What they do have to worry about, though, is their separation, the time of their separation. And so I believe it says what, Mom, 33 days we just read. So she shall touch nothing set apart for 33 days, shall not enter the set apart place until the day of her purification be fulfilled. So there's a lot of this that our sisters can't even really keep today. I mean, you can say the first 2 verses maybe they're able to keep, the first 2 or 3 verses in the chapter, but a lot of this has to do with the Levitical priesthood. A lot of this, and it's important to understand that a lot of this has to do. I don't know if they have to sleep in a different bedroom, brother, because it doesn't say that wherever she lies. Does it say, Mom, in the chapter wherever she lies? So that's a different command. That's a different context. That would be, I think, what, Mom, when she has her normal monthly period. That's how it's supposed to go, that a man can't lie on the same bed as her or he'll become ceremoniously unclean. I think there's a different context to that, if I'm not mistaken. That's when she has her normal blood flow. That's the case. But I think when it's talking about it could be, I mean, you could assume that it's the same thing, but it's not really spelled out for us in this chapter. So that's kind of a gray area, though. I don't know if it's the same thing when you're talking about childbirth versus her regular monthly period, monthly blood flow separation. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Answered the question that he had about touching the curtain. I'm not sure what he meant by that.
Touching the curtain. In what context?
No, Ray had that question. I'm not sure what he meant by that.
Yeah, Brother Ray, if you could message what you meant by that. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, bro. You can unmute yourself and explain. I just want to understand what the question is.
Yeah, so my question was, well, I'll just use like me as a real example. So I don't know what's going on, but there's like a lot of flies coming in, and I have this spray that just like automatically pretty much like kills them. So there's like a lot of dead flies that die on my curtain. I don't touch the dead flies, at least I try my best not to. But if I touch the curtain that they died on, am I unclean?
No.
And then, okay.
Nope. That curtain would be unclean, not you. The uncleanness is not on you, but on the curtain. And the curtain itself, what material is usually on curtains, Mom?
Curtains are usually either silk or sometimes they're cotton.
I think the only way you could honestly keep a commandment for that instance would be to take the curtain down and wash it in water and let it dry. I think that's the best you can do at that point. We're not commanded to get rid of curtains. As far as I know from Leviticus 11, the curtain would be clean at evening when you wash it. So if like say, and what I mean by this is like the context would be that fly would have to, its carcass would have to hit the curtain. Like if it bounces off the curtain, doesn't die on the curtain, then it's not unclean. So I want to also clarify for that. Like Leviticus 11, what we just read, it means that whatever it like touches, then it becomes unclean. So, and it has to like die. Like it has to be a carcass touching that curtain. So say like you spray it, right? It's still alive. It bounces off of the curtain, then hits the floor. The curtain's not unclean. You know what I'm saying? So like, for example, if a fly tried to get in my coffee, it's in my coffee and it's still alive, I take it out with a plastic spoon. I don't have to throw away that cup because it didn't die on it. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I mean. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Ray.
So I guess like, because I mean the fly, I mean like I don't like spray the fly, like just the spray, I guess like the spray I put it every 3 months and I guess it kills, like it's meant for cockroaches, but I guess flies get really messed up by it too. But like there is like a dead carcass on the curtain. I just haven't taken it out. I have touched the curtain, and I have like went into my bed and sat on my desk chair. So now it's like I wonder like if everything's unclean because I touched the curtain, and I don't know if I can even wash these curtains either. That's the crazy thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, what I would say is if it already died on it and you don't want to touch it, best case scenario for you, it depends on how important the curtain is to you, to be honest. I mean, you kind of have two options realistically. You could either throw away that curtain if it's not that important to you, or take a napkin or whatever, just pluck off the dead fly, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah, I mean, I could throw out the fly. That's not the fly. It's just like,
so that's
the uncleanness that's important to me. Like touching the curtain, that I just like mess up my whole house now because I touched the curtain and I've sat in chairs, laid in my bed.
Nah, you're good, man. Just throw out. Just try to get a napkin, whatever, so you're not directly touching it, and just throw out the fly. And I would say wash the curtain. Like I said, you don't have to laundry either. Like really, whatever gets defiled by the dead body, as long as we're lawfully able to clean it, and it will be clean at evening, you're just washing it in water. So that's really all you're doing. The only thing I see in Leviticus 11 where you cannot salvage is if I don't have a ceramic or earthenware cup, but my mom has an earthenware cup right over there. If a fly died right on that cup, she would have to crack it. That's the only type of material you got to crack. It's earthenware. There's no other material Yahuwah commands us to break or get rid of because a dead body's on it of an unclean creature. So that's, yep, go ahead.
So would you say that whoever touches that curtain has to wash themselves too and wash their clothes? And
no, not the curtain. No, it says that you become unclean by touching the carcass, not what the carcass touches. So you can't become unclean by a third party. is what I'm trying to say. What the verse is saying is that he who touched whatever falls upon that thing is unclean. So you would have to wash that material, but washing that material doesn't make you unclean. What would make you unclean is touching the actual fly, like with your hands. That makes you unclean. You know what I'm saying? So like that's the thing. You can't indirectly become unclean. For the most part in Torah, you can't indirectly become unclean. It has to be something directly that makes you unclean. Even, and we're going to get into it in the study about, dead bodies and all that, when a relative dies and all that, we're going to get into that. But you would have to become unclean by them if you were in the same room as that dead person, or that dead person touched you. You like touched them, their dead body. Like you can't indirectly become unclean. Say like my mom has a relative that dies here, right? And she becomes unclean just because they're in the same room as her. I wouldn't become unclean unless I was here. So I can't become unclean unless I walk in the room. I walk in the apartment. So that's the only way I could become unclean. If I'm not home, then there's no way. Go ahead. Sister Victoria, go ahead.
Okay, so let's say I just like smacked the fly or smacked like a mosquito, and can I just go like wash my hands after and then just be clean until the evening?
I think you might have to actually bathe your whole body in water, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, you're like either taking a shower or bathing, taking a bath. If you become unclean, ritually, ceremoniously unclean, you actually have to take an actual bath or shower, if I remember correctly. So they're usually, when they become unclean, you're actually bathing fully. Your body's fully bathing your body in water. What I would say though is when you smack a fly, right? It also depends on where does that fly? Does it die in your hand? Because you can touch an unclean creature and not be unclean. Like what I mean by this is you can have a pig as a pet and you're not unclean. You can have a snake as a pet, but you're not unclean. Like basically, for you directly to become unclean because of the carcass of a unclean creature, you have to directly kill it. You have to kill it like almost in your hand. It has to like literally be like, I would have to smack the fly and then fully kill it like with my hand, where its dead body would be on my hand. So say you smack the fly to get it out of your face and then it goes somewhere else and dies somewhere else. You're not unclean. So if that makes any sense. Go ahead, Brother Josh. I don't know if you wanted to say something. No? Okay. So hopefully that explains that a little bit. Like you can't indirectly become unclean in that way. You can't. It's impossible. So that's just something I wanted to clear up. So anyway, so because when you're smacking a fly, you're smacking something that's alive. Unless that fly dies in your hand or dies when you touch it, you're not touching a carcass. Just to clarify there. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
Yeah, so would you say that it would be a sin not to wash the curtains that same day, or not wash the curtains?
If you're planning on keeping them, yeah. If you're planning on keeping them and to wash them, yeah, I would say that could technically be a sin. But also you're not required to keep those curtains either, so it's kind of like it's kind of up to you. Like basically the point of what Yahuwah gives in Leviticus 11 is that he's giving them commandments that are an allowance to keep certain vessels, to basically, they don't have to get rid of wooden vessels that have become unclean because of the dead body of insect or any type of unclean animal. So it's kind of like up to you in that aspect, because you could just throw out that curtain if you really wanted, but if you're going to keep it, then you have to you would have to remove that fly from it or whatever died on it, and then you would have to wash it. So I think that's totally up to you. I don't see a commandment that says you got to keep it, like a garment like that, like a blind or a curtain or whatever you call it. I don't think you have to keep it. I think the point is that Yahuwah is giving them wooden vessel allowance for wooden vessels, a certain type of vessels that can be clean at evening. If you wash it in water, it can be clean at evening. So there. And another thing too is like we're kind of going on hypotheticals here with curtains and blinds and stuff like that. That's not really mentioned in the chapter. What we're supposed to do is, so I think you really got to use discernment with that, whether you think Yahuwah would want you to get rid of it, or because that it's kind of a gray area. It's the way I look at it is like you got two choices. Like I said, you could either remove the fly from the curtain, wash the curtain, it could be clean at evening, or you could throw it out if you really don't need it. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
I see. I mean, I guess I just hope it. I hope that it doesn't have to be like washed the very same day.
Yeah.
I guess it's too late right now, anyways. But
yeah, I mean, you could always repent of it and then clean it now, and I don't think Yahuwah is going to hold it against you because you just didn't know. You could just repent right away and fix that. Could be an option if you really feel convicted about that. I definitely think when we look at the normal vessels, though, it does say to, like, the context would be to clean it that same day, because that evening it would be clean, right? So say you had something wooden, a wooden vessel, a dead animal or a dead carcass touched it, right? So it's unclean till that following, till later that night at sunset. So you would have to clean it. You would have to wash it first in water before that sunset for it to be clean at that sunset. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what you would have to do. There's almost no other way to really do it. For it to be clean that night, you would have to wash it right away. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
I see. I mean, I guess for me, like, it's not really so much like getting the object back that same day. For me, it's just more like I just don't want to be against him, so like that's kind of why I want to know if it's okay to just kind of like put everything unclean to the side for a few days and handle everything at once, like all in one day, or if it's like no, you have to do it that same day before sundown. I would definitely
say the scripture hints more to that you're not really allowed to like let it wait. The scripture definitely, from what I'm seeing here, the whole purpose of it being clean at that evening is because they're washing it right away. So that's what I say. I would say I would play it safe and wash it right away so that you're not in danger of sin, hypothetically speaking. So, that's what I would do, because it seems like Yahuwah was given that command for a purpose, that the reason it's clean that evening, that sunset, is because they're washing it as soon as it becomes unclean. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would like it if I had like my own personal washer or dryer in my apartment.
Yeah, like I said, bro, the best thing to do is wash it in the sink. If you got a tub or a bathtub, wash it there. Like I said, like he only requires that we wash it in water, so you should be fine just washing it in the sink.
I guess like want to be like drenched and like it'll probably never dry on its own. I don't know.
Like what I used to do in the past, my mom can attest to this. What I used to do was I used to lay it out right next to the air conditioner, and then if you have an air conditioner, sometimes the air conditioners like have a warm air option, so you can like air dry it like that. That would be my best suggestion. Worst case scenario is, it smells a little bit, whatever, but You could always just, save it for later in the week when you do laundry and just, wash it in the dryer and all that. So that my best option for you though is to just wash it in the bathtub, probably, since it is a big, type of curtain. You're probably gonna need to wash it in the bathtub and just kind of air dry. Try your best to air dry it. I think that's the best you could do.
I wonder if they have like drying racks or something that someone can just like buy or something.
Yeah. There's drying racks. There's definitely drying racks. There's Mom, remember those stands you used to have?
Yeah, I would love to get a hold of one.
Those my mom had when I grew up, like back in the day.
Yeah.
It would be these stands
An accordion type thing.
Almost like an accordion type of thing where you dried them on like a stand. And I don't know if they still sell them nowadays.
I think they do. I gotta find one because we need one.
Yeah. But anyway, that's the best. That's the best to my ability. Could I answer that question? So I think we're on now the law of leprosy, if I'm not mistaken. So now we're getting into the laws of leprosy and what we have to do for that. So we're going to go to Leviticus 13. Oh, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Just to add real quick, one thing that you can do is you can put it on a hanger and you can hang it underneath your fan, like on your fan. Or another option is to have two pairs of shorts that you sleep with, and just keep two pairs. And then after one gets washed, regardless of whether it, smells a little bit mildewy because it didn't dry right. You're not going anywhere. You're just wearing it to bed. So, that way you can alternate what you have to wash. So you always have one that's clean. And if it doesn't dry just right and it smells a little bit mildewy, you're only wearing it to bed. So no big deal.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. That's smart. So let's see here. We're going to go to Leviticus 13 right now.
Before you read it, I just wanted to make mention of something, or actually ask a question. So the priests then must have been schooled in a little bit of medical knowledge, right?
They would have had to know how to observe what is leprosy, what is not.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they were the actual physicians.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I wanted to say.
Oh, that's a good question.
No, I just find it being a medical person, I find it very interesting that they were the ones that had to assess whether somebody was infectious or, and there's even a little bit of, what do you call it when you have isolation, which, obviously the hospitals to this day, follow these things according,
Yeah. What they do. They do.
They call it cohorting if you're in a room with somebody else, or isolated if you're not.
Yeah. So I'll try to get to the point here because this is a pretty long chapter. So I just want to kind of get to the brass tacks of this stuff about how long you're unclean for and all that. That was like the major questions, and stuff like that. So let's jump to verse 3 here. And the priest shall view the spot in the skin of his flesh, and if the hair in the spot be changed to white, the appearance of the spot be below the skin of the flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look upon it and pronounce him unclean. But if the spot be clear and white in the skin of his flesh, yet the appearance of it be not deep below the skin, and its hair have not changed itself for white hair, but it is dark skinned, then the priest shall separate him that has the spot 7 days. So basically, if you're pronounced unclean by the priest, and again, a lot of this we can't keep today because from what it looks like, the priests are the doctors. So I don't even know how you would do this in a Melchizedek priesthood. So that's kind of a gray area there. That's kind of like, you're going to see in the next couple of chapters how a lot of this stuff we can't really keep in these chapters because, number one, when we get to the mildew in the house and all that, what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to like destroy the wall and all that. So you can't, and the priest is supposed to inspect the wall. So you're going to see a lot of these is going to be hard to keep in the Melchizedek priesthood. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Also, when you're in the land of your captivity and you don't own the house that you're living in, you're renting it, you can't destroy the walls of something that doesn't belong to you.
No, not at all.
You could, but have fun with that.
Yeah, like I guess you're gonna like jail a lot, because that's what's gonna happen. You're destroying someone else's property, basically. So, this is not our land. That's what a lot of people don't understand is that America is not the land he gave us. But anyway, so the priest shall look on the spot the seventh day, and behold, if the spot remains before him, the spot has not spread in the skin, then the priest shall separate him the second time 7 days. The priest shall look upon him the second time on the seventh day, and behold, if the spot be dark, and the spot have not spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, for he is a mere mark, and the man shall wash his garments and be clean. But if the bright spot should have changed and spread in the skin after the priest has seen him for the purpose of purifying him, then shall he appear the second time to the priest, and the priest shall look upon him, and behold, if the mark has spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. And if a man has a plague of leprosy, then he shall come to the priest. Okay? And if the priest shall look, and behold, if it is a white spot in the skin, and has changed the hair to white, there be some of the sound of part of the quick flesh in the sore. It is a leprosy waxing old in the skin of the flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall separate him, because he is unclean. And if the leprosy should have come out very evidently in the skin, the leprosy should cover all the skin of the patient from the head to the feet, wheresoever the priest shall look. Then the priest shall look, and behold, the leprosy has covered all the skin of flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him clean of the plague, because it has changed all to white, it is clean. So just reading this, it kind of makes me wonder, like, if eczema is like a type of plague. I kind of, you don't think so?
I don't
All right.
think so.
I was just thinking about that because I had a friend growing up. His name was Carney.
I do not think so.
He had.
It's definitely not the same thing.
Okay. I was just wondering if it's another plague
I
or
looked
something
up
like that.
leprosy recently, the
Okay.
last year, I'll say, and actually, it's a very simple treatment that medical professionals have for it. They can clear it up right away.
The reason I asked it was because his type of eczema,
Well,
it was very white and spotty. So that's why I say it kind of looks similar to leprosy.
I don't think you're on the same bandwagon at all. I really don't.
Okay.
That doesn't sound like eczema. They
Okay.
probably got a wrong
It's not an
diagnosis.
infectious
Okay.
disease.
Okay.
It's just a skin irritation. It's really
All right. I was just wondering.
hard.
But on whatsoever day quick flesh shall appear on him, he shall be pronounced unclean. The priest shall look upon the sound flesh. The sound flesh shall prove him to be unclean, for it is unclean, it is leprosy. But if the sound flesh be restored and changed to white, then he shall come to the priest. The priest shall see him. Behold, if the plague is turned white, then the priest shall pronounce the patient clean. He is clean. And if the flesh should have become an ulcer in his skin and should be heated, and there should be in the place of an ulcer a white sore, and looking white and bright or fiery, it shall be seen by the priest. The priest shall look, and behold, if the appearance beneath the skin and its hair has changed white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean, because it is leprosy, it has broken out in the ulcer. Okay, so, all right, here we go. Here's the part I want to get to. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I'll come back to this at the end of the study. Never mind.
Yeah, it's okay. But if the priest look, yeah, my bad, brother Ray. I just noticed that. My bad about that. I put the screen back on. I forgot to put the shared screen back on. But if the priest look, I'm at verse 21 of Leviticus 13 here. But behold, there is no white hair on it, and if it be not below the skin of the flesh, it be dark colored, then the priest shall separate him 7 days. But if it manifestly spread over the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the ulcer. But if the bright spot should remain in its place and not spread, it is the scar of the ulcer, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. And if the flesh be in his skin in a state of fiery inflammation, there should be in his skin the part which is healed of the inflammation, bright, clear, white, suffused with red or very white. Then the priest shall look upon him, and behold, if the hair being white is changed to a bright color, and its appearance is lower than the skin, it is leprosy. It has been broken out of the inflammation, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. But if the priest should look, and behold, there is not in the bright spot any white hair, and it should not be lower than the skin, it should be dark, then the priest shall separate him 7 days. And the priest shall look upon him on the 7th day. If the spot be much spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. It has broken out in the ulcer. But the bright spot, if the bright spot remains stationary and be not spread in the skin, but the sore should be dark, it is a scar of inflammation. The priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is a mark of the inflammation. And if a man or woman have in them a plague of leprosy, or in the head or the beard, then the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the appearance of it be beneath the skin, and in it there be thin yellowish hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scurf, and it is a leprosy of the head or leprosy of the beard. I think modern translations would probably call it scurvy. If I'm not mistaken, Mom, I think yours might call it that.
Right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, check in your NIV, see if scurvy's there. I'm curious.
Okay, I'm
because
sorry. Which exact verse are we talking about?
Scurvy.
What verse, honey?
It's verse 31, I think.
Right.
Says scurf in the Septuagint. I have a feeling that's like an old British term of scurvy. I have a feeling that's like the etymology of scurvy.
I don't see anything like that.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. I could have swore I saw it in the NLT as scurvy and other paraphrases. So anyway. And behold, the appearance of it be not beneath the skin. There is no yellowish hair in it. Then the priest shall set apart him that has the plague of the scurf 7 days. And the priest shall look at the plague on the 7th day, and behold, if the scurf be not spread, there be no yellowish hair on it, and the appearance of the scurf is not hollow under the skin, then the skin shall be shaved, but the scurf shall not be shaven. The priest shall set aside the person having the scurf the second time for 7 days. And the priest shall see the scurf on the 7th day, and behold, if the scurf is not spread in the skin after the man's being shaved, and the appearance of the scurf is not hollow beneath the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his garments to be clean. But if the scurf be indeed spread in the skin after he has been purified, then the priest shall look, and behold, if the scurf be spread in the skin, the priest shall not examine concerning the yellow hair, for he is unclean. But if the scurf remain before him in its place, a dark hair should have arisen in it, the scurf is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. And if the woman, if a man or a woman should have in the skin of their flesh spots of a bright whiteness, then the priest shall look, and behold, there being bright spots of a bright whiteness in the skin of their flesh, it is a tetter. It bursts forth in the skin of his flesh. He is clean. Anyone's head should lose the hair. He is only bald. He is clean. And if his head should lose the hair in front, he he is forehead bald, he is clean. So basically, it's saying if you're losing hair, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
There's nothing. It's natural. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not even ceremoniously unclean. So just a clarification here. It's showing here that there's nothing wrong with forehead baldness or complete baldness. Okay. If there should be in his baldness of the head or his baldness of the forehead a white or fiery plague. So what you would have to look for is like a white fiery spot on your head. It is a leprosy in its baldness of the head or baldness of a forehead, and the priest shall look upon him. And behold, if the appearance of the plague be white or inflamed in his baldness of head or baldness in front, as the appearance of leprosy in the skin of his flesh, he is a leprous man. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His plague is in his head. And the leper in whom the plague is let his garments be ungirt, and his head uncovered. Let him have a covering put upon his mouth, and shall be called unclean. All the days in which the plague shall be upon him, being unclean, he shall be esteemed unclean. He shall dwell apart. His place of sojourn shall be without the camp. So basically, when you're ceremoniously unclean, you cannot be in the camp. And spiritually, the reason why is that Yahuwah dwelled with them in the camp. So you can't have ceremonial uncleanness in Yahuwah's presence. That's the whole point.
Did we get to the torn clothes part?
We're close. We're getting close. We're at verse 47 now, I think. So we're getting close. All the days in which the plague shall be upon him, being clean, shall be esteemed unclean. He shall dwell apart. His place of sojourn shall be outside the camp. And if a garment has in the plague of leprosy a garment of wool, a garment of flax, either in the warp or in the woof. I always never understood what warp and woof is talking about. Does your mom have a little bit modern terminology there? Warp, woof, what does it mean like outside, inside? Like I'm assuming that's what it means, but it's just weird British English there. Warp and woof. Or in the linen, or in the woolen threads, or in the skin, or in any workmanship of skin. And the plague of greenish or reddish in the skin, or in the garment. Yeah, this is talking about mildew context, yeah. Either in the warp or in the woof, or in any utensil of skin, it is a plague of leprosy. He shall show it to the priest. And the priest shall look upon the plague, and the priest shall set apart that which has the plague 7 days. The priest shall look upon the plague on the 7th day, and if the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp, in the woof, or in the skin, in whatsoever things skins may be used in their workmanship, and the plague is confirmed leprosy, it is unclean. He shall burn the garment, either the warp or the woof, in the woolen garments, or in flax, or in any utensil of skin in which there may be the plague, because it is confirmed leprosy, it shall be burnt with fire. And if the priest should see, and the plague be not spread in the garments, either in the warp, in the woof, or in any utensil of skin, then the priest shall give directions, and one shall wash that on which there may have been plague, and the priest shall set it aside a second time for 7 days. And the priest shall look upon it after the plague has been washed, and if this, even the plague, has not changed its appearance, and the plague does not spread, it is unclean, it shall be burnt with fire, it is fixed in the garment, in the warp, or in the woof. And if the priest should look, and the spot be dark after it has been washed, he shall tear it off from the garment, either from the warp, or from the woof, or from the skin. Okay. And it should still appear in the garment, either in the warp, or the woof, or in the article of skin, bursting forth, that wherein is the plague shall be burnt with fire. And the garment of the warp of the wolf or any article of skin which shall be washed, and the plague depart from it, shall also be washed again, and shall be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy, of a woolen or linen garment, either of the warp or the wolf, or any leather article. to pronounce it clean or unclean. So that's the end of chapter 13. Let's see, we got a couple questions or hands raised here. Oh, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
All right. And I know we've gone over it before. It's something that I'm still going back and forth with in my mind. Just because, like, you have two different Greek words being used for the dead. You have necros, and then sometimes where it translates dead body, you have it, instead of using necros, you have it using pneuma. So I'm just really confused as to why the Greek text uses pneuma rather than necros, where it talks about being defiled for reason of a dead body. When necros is not there, body's not there. When they put pneuma, where it's literally saying, like, if you were to read it in the Greek, being defiled for a spirit. Like, and not coming into the assembly while being defiled. That's something I'm still struggling with, because I'm being not fully delivered. At least from what I believe, that there's still things that need to be cast out. I don't want to be coming into an assembly defiling it when Yahuwah is in that, where two or more gathered, we know that he's here. So that's something that I'm still struggling with, and I don't know if you have any answers on that.
Yeah. I'm not ready to say that you cast people out because they're being afflicted, or that they can't come on because they're being afflicted. The reason I say this is, we look in the Brit Hadashah, there would be huge contradictions then. Yahusha is delivering people that have unclean spirits in them. They're not casted out. They're not outside the camp. They're in the temple half of the time when he's actually delivering them. So, before they're even delivered, they're actually at the temple with other Israelites. You know what I'm saying? So if I was to say, brother, like, let's use you as an example. Oh, brother, you're struggling with a demon. We can't let you in. I would be contradicting Yahusha's whole ministry. I would actually be putting a heavy yoke on an assembly to do that. That's not right. So I don't know if there's people out there that teach that, but if they do, they're adding to scripture, because Yahusha never did that. The apostles never did that. If anything, they would be praying hands over them, like James talks about. So if anything, they would be trying to deliver that person rather than turn them away. I don't know if that's a church understanding or something, but that's.
I picked up that understanding listening to a brother, Yahuwah's Remnant, and it's been hard to let go of, because I see that I just see the two different Greek words, necros, being used for a lot of the times for dead, but then when it talks about the defiling of a dead body, it doesn't use necros, it uses pneuma. That being said, that same brother that has that channel is pulling from a lot of Gnostic books, which is why I don't watch that channel anymore. But just that, what you said makes sense. It definitely makes sense. But I would just say that that's where I picked up that understanding, and it made complete sense at the time.
Yeah.
I think he was talking about not eating the Pesach while carrying the spirit.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer the whole necros versus the other word thing. The only thing I can think of is that it's talking about two different types of dead. That's the only thing I can think of in the most literal sense, is that one, it could be talking about actually defiling yourself with a dead body, doing some weird stuff, like probably like, you know, probably like necrophilia or whatever, could be talking about in certain contexts, where it's not just talking about being near a dead body. It could be talking about like, in a sense, it could be talking about talking to the dead. What else is there, Mom? When you're talking about like the necro stuff, you're talking about you know, in a weird way, it could be talking about someone that's being defiled. If it is talking about demonic spirits, it would be talking about someone that's willfully actually, you know, actually trying to, you know, contact the dead too.
Yeah.
So, you know, even with a spiritualization of one of those words, I wouldn't get that you're supposed to cast someone out from the assembly. I would get that it just means that people that are willfully contacting the dead, you should probably take out of the camp.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know, like for example, right? And actually it's worse than taking them out of the camp. If that's what it's talking about, then they're supposed to be put to death. Willfully talking to demons, like willfully connecting with the dead and the spiritual world, that's sorcery. So they would actually be commanded to, in the Levitical priesthood, that would be stoned immediately. So, you know, that, so I see what you're saying, but I think we might not know what those words really mean either. So we're going off a limited understanding from the Strong's Concordance too. So there's no way to know fully the difference between those two words. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk more about that, bro, off the record. I don't want to get too off topic.
I find interesting concerning all this medical stuff. Isn't it interesting that Yahusha didn't ever need to have gloves on? He didn't ever need a mask
no, he wasn't
anything,
separating himself.
You know?
You know, which is kind of interesting too, because that means you can't confuse someone being ceremonially unclean with someone that's dealing with a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So interpreting it that way would make no sense, because then Yahusha shouldn't be in the presence of someone that's ceremonially unclean, casting out a demon from them. You know what I'm saying? So like that would contradict itself, that theology. That would actually be like, okay, then Yahusha's breaking Torah then, because he's in front of a demon-possessed person, casting them out, touching them most likely.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be quarantined for certain ceremonial uncleanness. So we're going to deal with that, I think, in the next chapter or two, the quarantining.
I mean, like leprosy being an infectious disease, and we know he had to be Elohim, because normal people like you and I, if we were dealing with somebody with an infectious disease, we'd have to be protected. We would have to be protected. You cannot go up upon a person like that and put your band on them. And it just shows the difference between somebody like us and Elohim. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I was trying to make is that.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. The cleansing of the leper is the next chapter. Let's see. Cleansing of the leper. Okay, so this is the next chapter. So this is going to do what they have to do when someone is pronounced with leprosy. Okay, chapter 14 of Leviticus. Here we go. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, "This is the law of the leper, and whatsoever he shall have been cleansed, then shall he be brought to the priest. The priest shall come forth out of the camp, and the priest shall look, and behold, the plague of leprosy is removed from the leper, and the priest shall give directions, and they shall take for him that is cleansed 2 clean live birds and cedar wood and spun scarlet and hyssop, and the priest shall give direction. And they shall kill 1 bird over an earthen vessel over the running water." Yeah, this is the sacrifice. They have to do the sacrifice for the leper, so they're going to kill 1 dove. Which doves were, I think they were peace offerings a lot of time, these doves, these turtle doves. And as for the living bird, he shall take it and cedar wood and spun scarlet That's another thing you'll notice. The Masoretic doesn't say spun a lot of the time. Spun scarlet and hyssop, and he shall dip them in living and the living bird into the blood of the bird that was slain over the running water. What's interesting, if you think about it too, right? Yahusha is symbolized as a dove. This is what Paul means in Colossians, that all these sacrifices point to him, because you have the dove, you have the blood, the blood, cleansing. So, we're purified through his blood. And he shall dip them in the living bird in the blood of the bird that was slain over the running water. And he shall sprinkle 7 times upon him that was cleansed of his leprosy, and he shall be clean. He shall let go the living bird into the field. And the man that has been cleansed shall wash his garments and shall shave off all his hair. And, again, not trying to go on the whole rabbit trail, but this is why I don't believe shaving is a sin, okay? Multiple times in Scripture, people are commanded to shave their hair for certain reasons, okay? And shall shave off all his hair, shall wash himself in water, and shall be clean. And after that, he shall go into the camp and shall remain out of the house 7 days. And it shall come to pass on the 7th day, he shall shave off all his hair and his head and his beard and his eyebrows, even all his hair, and shall he shave. And he shall wash his garments and wash his body with water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take 2 lambs without spot of a year old, and 1 ewe lamb without spot of a year old, and 3/10 of fine flour for sacrifice kneaded with oil, and 1 small cup of oil. And the priest that cleanses shall present the man under purification these offerings before Yahuwah at the door of the tabernacle of witness. And the priest shall take 1 lamb, offer him for a trespass offering, the cup of oil, and set them apart for a special offering before Yahuwah. And they shall kill the lamb in the place where they kill the whole burnt offerings and sin offerings in a set apart place. For it is a sin offering as a trespass offering. It belongs to you. The priest is most set apart. And the priest shall take of the blood of the trespass offering. The priest shall put it on the tip of the right ear of the person under the cleansing, and of the thumb of his right hand, and the great toe of his right foot. And the priest shall take the cup of oil and shall pour it on his own left hand. And he shall dip with the finger of his right hand in some of the oil that is in his left hand. He shall sprinkle with his fingers 7 times before Yahuwah. And the remaining oil that is in his hand, the priest shall put on the right tip of his ear, of the ear of him that is under cleansing, and on the thumb of the right hand, and the great toe of his right foot, on the place of the blood of the trespass offering. And the remaining oil that is on the hand of the priest will put on the head of the cleansed leper, and the priest shall make atonement for him before Yahuwah. And the priest shall sacrifice the sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for the person under purification to cleanse them from his sin. Afterwards, the priest shall slay the whole burnt offering. And the priest shall offer the whole burnt offering and sacrifice upon the altar before Yahuwah, and the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be cleansed. And if he should be poor and cannot afford so much, he shall take 1 lamb for his transgression for a separate offering, so as to make propitiation for him, and a 10th deal of fine flour mingled with oil for a free sacrifice, and 1 cup of oil, and the 2 turtle doves of 2 young pigeons, as he can afford, and the one shall be for a sin offering, the other for a whole burnt offering. And he shall bring them on the 8th day to purify them to the priest, to the door of the tabernacle of witness before Yahuwah. And the priest shall take the lamb of the trespass offering and the cup of oil and place them for a set apart offering before Yahuwah. Okay, verse 25. Hey, Mom, can you take over real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Verse 25.
Okay, that's 14:25. Right?
Yes.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering and take some of its blood and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest is to pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and with his right forefinger sprinkle some of the oil from his palm 7 times before Yahuwah. Some of the oil in his palm he is to put on the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear, on the one to be cleansed on, the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before Yahuwah. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or the young pigeons, which the person can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before Yahuwah on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has an infectious skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offerings for his cleansing. Go on to the mildew, Doug?
Yeah, we're going to do the whole rest of the chapter there.
Okay. Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aaron, when you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like mildew in my house. The priest is to order the house to be emptied before he goes in to examine the mildew, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mildew on the walls, and if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appears to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out of the house and at the entrance close up the house for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mildew has spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside scraped and the that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones to replace these and take new clay and plaster the house. If the mildew reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it. And if the mildew has spread in the house, it is a destructive mildew. The house is unclean. It must be torn down, the stones, timbers, and all the plaster, and take it out of the town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash his clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it, and the mildew has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mildew is gone. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he is to take cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird and the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. In this way, he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. These are the regulations for any infectious skin disease, for an itch, for mildew in clothing or in a house, and for a swelling, a rash, or a bright spot. To determine when something is clean or unclean, These are the regulations for infectious skin diseases, and mildew.
All right, that's it. So that's the end of chapter 14 there. All right, so it's pretty much self-explanatory. Like, all right. So let's see here. Let's see here if there's any questions here. Okay. Yeah. So think unless we got any questions here, we can pretty much move on to chapter 15 of Leviticus here. So we're down here, right here. Laws about bodily discharges. Okay. So this is going to deal with issues for men and women. All right. So let's go to that. Let's go to chapter 15. Let me make sure that my shared screen's working. All right, so let me do share the full screen there. All right, so Leviticus 15 from the Septuagint. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Yasharal, and you shall say to them, whatever a man shall have an issue out of his body, his issue is unclean. This is the law of his uncleanness. Whoever has a gonorrhea out of his body, this is his uncleanness in him by reason of the issue, by which his body is affected through the issue all the days of the issue in his body, by which his body is affected through the issue, there is his uncleanness. Every bed on which he that has the issue shall happen to lie is unclean. Every seat on which that he has an issue may happen to sit shall be unclean. And the man, this is why I think it's not talking about nocturnal emissions, because this is a constant flow. This is not just like you go to bed one night and then you have some spilled in your pajamas or whatever. I'm not trying to be crude or anything. This is like constant flowing of the issue, because it's saying that you're unclean. Constant cleaning. Constant cleaning, like constant flowing to where he's unclean for a certain amount of period. Wherever he sits, he's unclean. Yeah. And the man who shall touch his bed shall wash his garments, bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean until evening. Now, whoever sits on the seat of which he that has the issue may have sat shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean till evening. He that touches the skin of him that has the issue shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, shall be unclean till evening. And if he that has the issue should spit upon him that is clean, that person shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and be unclean till evening. And every donkey's saddle on which the man with the issue shall have mounted shall be unclean till evening. And everyone that touches whatsoever shall have been under him shall be unclean until evening. He that takes them up shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean till evening. And whomsoever he that has the issue shall touch, if he has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his garments and bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean till evening. And the earthen vessel which that has the issue shall happen to touch shall be broken, and the wooden vessel shall be washed with water, and shall be unclean. Oh, my bad, shall be clean, my bad. And if he that has the issue should be cleansed of his issue, shall he number to himself 7 days for his purification. He that shall wash his garments and bathe his body in water, and shall be clean. And on the 8th day he shall take to himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. He shall bring them before Yahuwah to the doors of the tabernacle of witness, and shall give them to the priest. And the priest shall offer them, one for a sin offering, the other for a whole burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement for him before Yahuwah for his issue. And the man whose seed of copulation shall happen to go forth from him shall then wash his whole body, shall be unclean till evening. And every garment, every skin on which there shall be seed of copulation shall both be washed with water and shall be unclean till evening. And a woman, if a man shall lie with her with seed of copulation, they shall both bathe themselves in water and shall be unclean till evening. And the woman whomsoever shall have an issue of blood, when her issue shall be in her body, shall be 7 days in her separation. Everyone that touches her shall be unclean until evening. And everything whereupon she shall lie in her separation shall be unclean, and whatever she shall sit shall be unclean. Whosoever shall touch her bed shall wash his garments, bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean till evening. And everyone that touches any vessel on which she shall sit shall wash his garments, bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean till evening. All right. And whether it be while she is on her bed or on a seat which she may happen to sit on, when he touches her, he shall be unclean till evening. And if anyone shall lie with her, her uncleanness be upon him. He shall be unclean 7 days. Every bed on which he shall have laid shall be unclean. And if a woman has an issue of blood many days, not in the time of her separation, the blood should also flow from her separation. If the days of the issue of her uncleanness shall be as the days of her separation, she shall be unclean. And every bed on which she shall lie, all the days of her flux, meaning, her period, shall be to her as the bed of her separation. Every seat whereon she shall sit shall be unclean according to the uncleanness of her separation. Okay. Everyone that touches it shall be unclean, and he shall wash his garments, bathe his body in water, and shall be unclean till evening. But if she shall be cleansed from her flux, then she shall number her to herself 7 days. And afterwards she shall be esteemed clean. And on the 8th day she shall take 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons, shall bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of witness. And the priest shall offer one for a sin offering, another for a whole burnt offering. The priest shall make atonement for her before Yahuwah for her unclean flux. And you shall cause the children of Yashar to beware of their uncleanness, so they shall not die for their uncleanness in polluting my tabernacle that is among them. Now you'll find people that want to use this verse and say, okay, this means that there's no tabernacle, there's no temple, we don't have to keep these commands. The problem I have with this is the prior 30 verses have nothing to do with the temple. So if you take this isolated verse of this cell, and you build a doctrine around it that says, oh, we only need to do this in the Levitical priesthood, that makes no logical sense whatsoever. Women are still having periods. They still have beds and stuff they're going to lie on. That's going to make it ceremonially unclean for a man to lie on. So to me, that's complete hogwash. That's ridiculous. So anyway, verse 32. This is the law of the man who has an issue, and if one discharge seed of copulation so that he should be polluted by it. This is the law for her that has the issue of blood in her separation, and as to the person who has an issue of seed in his issue. It is a law for male and female, for the man who shall have lain with her, that is set apart. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, just funny comments in the chat here. But anyway, so I think we're going to be moving on here, unless I think we'll just move on. That was pretty much self-explanatory there. All right. So now we're going to go to chapter 16. We're only going to do a couple verses, guys, because I know we kind of read a lot of chapters so far. So now it's going to be more like cross references down this way. So we got Leviticus 16:21-28 next. Go ahead, Brother Ray. Go ahead. Yeah, you can ask a question. Go ahead.
So, I guess for Leviticus 15, if there's like a married couple, does that mean like the woman can't sleep on that bed while she's in her monthly period? She has to like, they have to like buy another bed or like a blow up mattress or something, and she can't sleep in that bed while she's on her period? Or
I would say it's actually the reverse. The guy can't. Pretty much the man is the one that has to improvise and kind of sleep somewhere else. Even though it doesn't say that, it doesn't say you sin by becoming unclean by her bed. It says if he lies there, he becomes unclean as she is unclean. So he would have to bathe, and at evening he would be clean. It's not like Yahuwah's. I think this is where the confusion comes. When Yahuwah says if someone does so, they become unclean, he's not saying they have sinned. He's nowhere in the chapter, right, does he say, do not lay where she lays. He's saying if the man so happens, maybe it would be worded better in the English, if he so happens to lay where she have laid, he is now unclean until evening, and he has to bathe in water. That's really the context of the chapter. A lot of us misunderstand that and think that Yahuwah is saying don't lay where she lays, because he never actually like word for word commands that in that chapter. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
so I guess what throws me off a little is, okay, so let's say like I'm married or something along those lines, and then my wife has the monthly separation, and she's laying on our main bed, right? The bed that we have in our bedroom. And I lay down on the bed, and now I'm unclean. It's still daytime, right? It's not sundown. I take a shower, I wash my clothes, then I lie down again, still not evening. Won't I have to shower again? And then it's just kind of, I wonder when does it stop, I guess, or
well,
like when
the chapter tells you when it stops. It says what is it, Mom? 8 days?
Yeah, I think so.
Once she's pure, she gets purified on the 8th day with a sacrifice. So obviously, with no sacrificial system, you would on the 8th day automatically, because Yahusha, he's our sacrifice for sin. On the 8th day, you would be clean anyway. Say hypothetically, you have a wife, right? And you lie where she lied or sat where she sat. The 8th day of she's unclean for 7 days, and then on the 8th day she's purified. So you would be purified on that same day. So it's like it's not it's temporary anyway, her uncleanness. So, and there's no mention in the chapter that you have to wash a bed. There's nothing about that. You don't have to wash her seat. You don't have to do anything. She's just unclean for a certain amount of time. Ceremonially, she's unclean for a certain amount of time. Then she becomes clean again when that separation is over. Go ahead, Ray.
So, okay. So after the 7 days, the bed, I'm still going off that same scenario, right? The one, so that same bed that we use, obviously I'm not married. It's just a little scenario I made up, but that same bed we use, would we have to like wash the,
Nope.
what's the word?
You're not washing anything. Anything she sits on will be ceremonially be unclean, but there's no commandment to wash anything. There's no purpose to wash it.
So the blankets, the pillows, nothing?
Nothing. You're not washing anything. You're worrying about your own body. She's worrying about her own body as far as the washing goes. That's the only thing that's getting washed is your body if you lay on the bed that she lays on, and vice versa. So that's the only thing you have to worry about. Like, you don't have to worry about any of the other stuff. Any objects she touches, you don't have to worry about washing them. It doesn't even, Yahuwah doesn't tell us that we need to worry about washing the bed, washing the seat. If her hand touches the counter table, you don't have to wash that either. She's just unclean for a certain period of time, basically.
So what if your wife gives you like a hug or something while she's on her monthly separation, do you have to like take a shower and wash your clothes then at that point, or not at all?
Wait, if my wife does what?
Gives you like a hug or something, like you're going out to work and she gives you a hug.
Did it say in the chapter that if the person touches her, they become unclean? Or
No.
it says no. What he's asking, Mom, is about the commands about, it says he sat where he sat, he laid where he laid. Does it say anything about if he gives his wife a hug that has
No, I've never
No.
seen anything like
no?
that.
So, like, if you directly touch her, you don't become unclean. Yeah, so that's where the nuance of that command is, and where we got to be careful, like, with interpreting these commands, because it's very easy to go off the rails with this,
That's right.
because it's a very specific type of command. We're talking about her monthly separation, all that. So the same thing, if you have a flow going, say you're constantly having, even when you're up and about, you're constantly having a flow happening to you. If you had a wife and she gave you a hug, she's not unclean from your flow. So it goes both ways. So just to explain that. So just to kind of simplify that, you can only become unclean by laying where she laid, sat where she sat. That's the only way. And some people, what they'll do as a tradition, they'll have a specific chair where the woman sits for that whole separation period.
That's the smartest thing to do.
I mean, if you really want to worry about preventing yourself to have to bathe by evening and all that, and you could do that. You could, have your wife, basically sit on the chair for as long as she's going to sit on it. Either way, though, you're going to have to lie on a different bed. So, I mean, either way, you're still going to have to avoid that. I mean, Yahuwah doesn't, just to clarify, though, Yahuwah does not command in this chapter anywhere in his Torah that it says, the majority of the time, he never commands us to say, keep yourself ceremonially clean always. Like, he knows we're going to become unclean ceremonially at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a sin to become ceremonially unclean. I want everyone to understand that, because I think that's where the confusion comes, is what's the difference between uncleanness referring to sin and sexual immorality, and just regular ceremonial uncleanness is what we're reading about. So there is a distinction. There is a difference. So this is the biggest problem, is we're not separating the two. So that's the biggest problem. And, so what I would say is, if you want to prevent from becoming ceremonially unclean, and you don't want to have to bathe in water every other time, my suggestion would be, if someone has a wife, is to get a chair for her during her separation, or you as her husband decide you're going to sleep somewhere else or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of if you're trying to avoid it like that. Go ahead, Ray.
So I guess 2 questions. All right. So would it be would the bed become clean when she's done with her monthly that evening or the next evening? Like, if she stops her monthly
as soon as she's clean, as soon as she's clean, automatically where she's laid becomes clean ceremonially again. Yeah, automatically.
And so like the sheets and the covers automatically become clean again.
Yeah, because it's really a state of being, to explain it fully. Because her blood is not really touching the bed. You really think about it. Like, she's in her clothes when this has happened to her. So the blood's not even touching the bed. It's just a state of being. Who is trying to explain to us is that in his eyes, you are in a ceremonial state of uncleanness for a certain amount of time, for certain reasons. So it's more of like a spiritual thing, really. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like that bed is physically defiled and her blood's on it. I mean, her blood's not even touching it. So, you know what I'm saying? So
sorry.
No, it's okay.
So the second question is, like, what if they only have one bathroom? Because like I guess not every apartment has like 2 bathrooms. So
Yeah, that's
I
why
guess
I'm
what would they
saying
do?
that it's impossible to avoid it. You know
I
what I'm
see.
saying? I think and this is just me speaking. I say kudos for the sisters that want to have their own chair to sit in, all that, but ultimately it's unavoidable. To 100% unavoid you sitting where your wife's going to sit during that period, it's unavoidable. You're going to have the same bathroom. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm saying it's not sin. I think we need to unlearn the idea that it's sin if we become ceremoniously unclean. I think we have to unlearn that because we're putting heavy burdens on ourselves. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
One way we can see that it's not sin is that you become ceremoniously unclean in certain instances where you have to dispose of the remnants of certain offerings. I forget which offerings, but there's certain offerings where you have to take them outside of the camp after the rest of the offering has been offered. You know what I'm talking about? Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. When you talking about the offerings and all that, yeah. Yeah, if it's sin to become ceremoniously unclean, then the priests are constantly sinning them. Because they're I don't even think I have it in this study. I should have included it, but the red heifer ashes. They'd be sinning like every time they do the red heifer sacrifice, or they'd be sinning every time they do the Passover sacrifice. They would be sinning like the Levites would be constantly in sin if becoming ceremoniously unclean is sinning in his eyes. And so like this and this misunderstanding has led people to add heavy yokes on themselves. I know some brothers and sisters that won't be intimate on the Sabbath because they think that there's somehow a command that says you can't be ceremonially unclean on the Sabbath, which I haven't found one place says that at all. I can understand the whole idea that you're bearing seed and it's your increase of the womb. I get that. But as far as a literal command, it's not there. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I could be wrong, but that sounds like it comes from the Zadokite scrolls.
Yeah, like I don't think people even take it from there. They just take the idea that uncleanness. They look at Exodus 19 and they try to like I said earlier when I read Exodus 19, they try to universalize it. Like we can't be unclean, so we got to stay from being ceremoniously unclean. If that's the case, if we go with that line of thinking, then Yahusha was conceived in sin. Then I think it's a dangerous thought process to go down. It really is. It's by the way, the only place you can find the verbatim command against intercourse on the Sabbath would be like weird, non-inspired extra biblical books from the Dead Sea and Jubilees. Those are like the only books that literally, quote unquote, command it. So anyway, no inspired source literally commands it. So anyway, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
No, I've heard people use scriptural things that have nothing to do with not doing it because it's clean or unclean, but referring to Isaiah 58, where it says, "Do not, if you should not seek your own pleasure."
Yeah, that's kind of. I'm really against generalizing that verse and universalizing your own pleasure and expanding it to everything. Like there's certain people. I'm trying to be nice, but put burdens on themselves on the Sabbath where all they do is read scripture. And then anything that's not reading scripture is doing your own pleasure. I don't know. To me, that's getting kind of rabbinical. Because I can think of other things than reading scripture and praising him as doing his will on the Sabbath. So, that's just me. I mean, if people really think they're doing their own pleasure, fine, that's up to them. That's their own personal conviction. But anyway. Yep, go ahead, bro.
I know not everybody sees it that way, I guess, but I mean, I don't see anything wrong with being in scripture or going out and sharing scripture with people or being in prayer and in worship all day long for Shabbat. That's enjoyable for me. So
No, I'm just saying like other activities, like people will only do that because they think anything outside of that is doing our own will, which would include like their rationalization, not saying yours, but their rationalization would be they don't do intercourse because they think that's their own pleasure. When, you know, that's a very gray area to me. That's a very gray area because part of Yahuwah's will was for them to increase and multiply. So, like, I believe when he's talking about doing our own personal pleasure, I'm going to give you a very good example that would be breaking both commands, doing our own pleasure and buying and selling. Perfect example. I buy and sell on the Sabbath. Am I doing Yahuwah's pleasure or my pleasure? That's my pleasure. I could go list on and on. When you look in context of what Isaiah 58 is talking about, it's talking about their personal pleasure that most likely has nothing to do with Yahuwah, nothing with setting him apart. That's what it means by don't do your own pleasure. It's not general, like people, I don't know. If you generalize the don't do your own pleasure, it's very hard not to make that rabbinical because then you're going to start thinking anything that's outside of reading the word and praising him is not his pleasure. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, go ahead.
Well, give us some examples of doing your own pleasure.
Like me working on a document for the Sabbath. That's not,
I mean,
like.
I mean, on the opposite end of not things that would not be considered, but things that would be considered your own pleasure.
Like doing our own pleasure to me would be, say, you know, obviously, let's say watching sports was allowable. Let's just say hypothetically speaking. I'm just going to put a hypothetical out there. Let's say sports was allowable to watch and it doesn't have any pagan origins. I'm throwing a hypothetical out there. Me watching a basketball or football game on the Sabbath is me doing my own pleasure. Me wanting to talk to a coworker about something that has nothing to do with the Sabbath or witnessing, but that's about work. It's me doing my own pleasure. Like examples like that. Like that's actually me seeking my own pleasure. But I can think of like tons of other things on the Sabbath that I do that is not exactly reading and praising him. That's still doing his will. Like me putting studies together, me, trying to make sure everyone comes on Zoom, making sure we're ready to record and everything. Catching up with brothers and sisters about their week. I don't think that's doing our own will. If we start like generalizing, do your own will on his Sabbath day, we're going to start becoming like the Pharisees, in my opinion. We're going to start, it's like, you start heaping up like traditions of men on top of that command, like extra guardrails, like how rabbinical Judaism does. Oh yeah, secular YouTube videos is a good example. Thank you, Brother Ray. That's a good example.
Oh, thanks be to you.
Videos, and what Brother Ray, I think, is alluding to, videos that have nothing to do with scripture, nothing like, example, I like watching cooking videos sometimes. I'm probably not going to do that on the Sabbath. Like, say there's a movie that I would usually watch or watch to expose it during the week. I probably won't do that on the Sabbath. That would be doing your own will. So a lot of times though, like I've noticed that there's like extreme error on both sides of that opinion, because then you'll have people that just think everything is doing your own pleasure. And then on the opposite side, people will on the opposite side do their own pleasure all the time on the Sabbath. So there's like two opposite errors of that. So the truth is like somewhere in the middle. Like you got certain things we do during the week that is definitely our own pleasure. I can think of a lot of things. YouTube's the big thing. And me personally, what I try to do too, this is just my own personal opinion. I try to stay off social media as much as possible on the Sabbath. You're not going to see me posting stuff as much on the Sabbath. You're not going to see me, really, wasting my time on Facebook or Instagram on the Sabbath. You're not going to see me doing that. So these are all examples of how someone could do their own will on the Sabbath. But it's that verse there has been taken out of context a lot. And I mean, that's fine. If someone truly believes intercourse is their own pleasure and they feel convicted about it, fine. That's okay, but that's their own conviction. It's not commanded in scripture to refrain from on the Sabbath, literally. So, anyway. But so
I had a few questions on the clean and unclean.
Go ahead, bro. Yeah, go ahead.
So it seems like, and I wonder if I'm right or wrong, but some uncleannesses are sin and some aren't, right?
Oh, my bad, bro. Go ahead.
What was that?
My bad, bro. I had something going on in the background by mistake. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's all right. So, like, it seems like from my understanding right now, like some uncleannesses aren't sin, but some are. What do you say? Or all uncleannesses aren't sin, depending on what you do while you're unclean.
Well, the uncleanness with sin, when it's quoted in the New Testament, right, it's talking about a certain type of spiritual uncleanness. It's talking about fornication. It's talking about sexual immorality. That's in an allegorical way considered uncleanness. But from the Tanakh usually doesn't refer to sin in general as uncleanness, usually. If Yahuwah calls uncleanness, or he's referring to uncleanness in the context of sinning, usually it's adultery, fornication, sexual immorality. It's rarely generalized as sin in general, rarely. I mean, most of the time we get that interpretation just by isolating Paul's letters, usually. That's how we get that interpretation. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
So there's a few verses that make me wonder because, and like, I hope you're right. Like, I really do. But there's some verses that make me wonder because I should have got them, but I'm still like, I've been like very like, I guess like I've been procrastinating to like keep reading. I'm on Exodus right now, almost done, but yeah, I think that once I read through Leviticus, hopefully I'll be able to find the verses and hopefully save them and share them with you. I think the fact that they have to do like a sin offering, or like they had to do a sin offering in Leviticus 15. I think Leviticus 5, like it makes so it's like they're guilty. It just makes me feel like they have to do a sin offering. Then I mean, it seems like maybe it's a sin to be unclean. I don't know.
If it's a sin to be unclean, though, bro, in a Melchizedek priesthood, we'd be screwed. We would have no redemption. So that makes no logical, like, to interpret it that way, you're going to have problems because you're once you get into the new covenant and there's no more sacrifices anymore, as far as sin sacrifices, there is none, not even the millennium. So even those commands, when you get into the new covenant, there's going to be certain things that are not even instituted anymore with the sacrifices. So to say that ceremonial uncleanness means we're in sin, the reason it doesn't make sense is because if that's the case, then something natural as a woman going through her period, she's sinning every time she's on her period. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And so that's why we got to take the whole counsel of Scripture. We got to look from Genesis to Revelations and harmonize it. We can't just take isolated verses that talk about sin sacrifices. In general, they had to give sin sacrifices for the sins of the people. That doesn't mean them being in a state of uncleanness made them sin. You get what I'm saying? So we can't take instances like that where it's talking about a sin sacrifice that is not even directly correlated with them being ceremonially unclean. They're giving a sin sacrifice because they would have to give a sin sacrifice. in that chapter, it also talks about peace offerings, if I'm not mistaken, and whole burnt offerings, which are not sacrifices for sin. They have nothing to do with sin. So we also have to take those chapters as a whole. We can't look at isolated verses because we'll start getting false doctrines when we do that. And that's what I'm saying. We have to be very careful that we look at these chapters as a whole and take it in context. Go ahead, Sister Shoshana. I see your hands up.
Yeah, I went through that with my ex. He believed that it was wrong to have sex on the Sabbath, oddly enough, because, well, the first time we ever had sex was on the Sabbath, which is kind of strange to me. But yeah, what he believed was that you're not supposed to try to reproduce on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, he
for
probably gets it
me,
from.
that would be quite unlikely, but because of my age and because I've never been able to get pregnant forever throughout my life, but that's the reason he believed that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, sis, that heretical book of Jubilees has deceived so many people. I'm kind of genuinely concerned about people that take that as scripture and then preach it so like vehemently. It's almost like they know it's not scripture to deceive people. Because it's crazy to me. I've never met another individual that would try to force that on people. I've never met someone in my life that was so vehement that Jubilees was scripture without any proof, and would try to force it on people. That's weird. But yeah, just
now you have. You've met somebody that it's been forced on now.
Yeah. So I hope our audience and listeners can understand the purpose of this study was to really rightly divide the word. And so before we go ahead, Brother Ray.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I hope that it helps someone else, because 2 years ago, or even not even just 2 years ago, but for a long time, I would have probably like really appreciated like a video like this. And I tried looking for videos like this, and it's not really out there. That's the problem. Is like a lot of people don't really talk about this stuff in depth, and you don't really know who to ask or go to. And it's such a big topic because, trust me, it's like I feel like the enemy or Christians will like really use this against you. It's like, oh, do you do Levitical laws? And you already feel like unsure about it, and convicted. So it's like I feel like people can really take this as like a very, they could pretty much use this against you in so many ways. And so I feel like it has to be talked about more in proper scriptural ways about clean and unclean, at least in my opinion. I remember I would reach out to people and I would never really get replies. There wouldn't be videos online. So it's hard.
This is one of the topics, bro, just to end this with. This is one of the topics no one wants us to touch because it's a what is it called, Mom? It's like a controversial topic.
Yeah, that's what you would say.
So there's certain topics you won't see in the Hebrew Roots movement. They don't make videos on because it causes people to unlearn tradition, it forces them to have to take precept upon precept, line upon line, and have to interpret scripture in context, which a lot of us, I think all of us, have never been raised with in the church. It's always been, oh, look at this one verse here, while even in the book of Isaiah, it tells you line upon line, precept upon precept. 2 Timothy, rightly divide the word of truth, to be able to divide one doctrine to the next correctly. But anyway, what I found interesting as I'm going through Genesis and the differences in Genesis, the LXX actually reads when Yahuwah is rebuking Cain. He says, if you didn't rightly divide it, wouldn't you have been accepted? So it's kind of interesting that same Greek term for rightly divided is used in Genesis 4 that you see in 2 Timothy. So it seems like Yahuwah would have told him, like, listen, like, I gave you all my commands. Like, you can't claim you don't know the first fruits offering and all that. Why didn't you rightly divide it? So, but anyway, yeah. So I really do, like as Brother Ray said, I really hope this study helped people out, helps people take off heavy yokes on themselves, and just help them rightly divide scripture. And like I said, I don't want you guys to take our word for it. Hey, test all the scriptures we went through. But anyway, let me. So I think we went through everything, right? Or I think we still have. Oh no, we actually still have some to go. My bad. I thought we already did it. My bad about that, guys. I'm a little off tonight. So let's just go through these real quick. I'm sorry about that, guys. I ended it a little early there. Let's go to Leviticus 16, 20, 28. So this is going to be just a short few verses here. It says here, I think this is dealing with the cleansing of the priest for the Day of Atonement. Okay, it says, and Aaron shall lay his hands on the head of the live goat, shall declare over him all the lawlessnesses of the children of Yashar, and all their unrighteousness, and all their sins, and he shall lay them upon the head of the live goat, and shall send him by the hand of the ready man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear their unrighteousness upon him into a desert land, and Aaron shall send away the goat into the wilderness. And Aaron shall enter into the tabernacle of witness, and shall put off the linen garment which he had put on as he entered into the set apart place, and shall lay it by there. And he shall bathe his body in water in the set apart place. He shall put on his raiment, and shall go out and offer the whole burnt offering for himself, and the whole burnt offering for the people, and shall make atonement for himself and for his house and for the people as for the priests. And he shall offer the fat for the sin offering on the altar. Okay. And he that sends forth the goat that has been set apart to be let go shall wash his garments, bathe his body in water, and afterwards shall enter into the camp. Okay, so obviously that's talking about the goat that was sacrificed. Now he's going to have to bathe his body in water, and he will enter the camp. And the calf for the sin offering, and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the set apart place, they shall carry forth out of the camp and burn them with fire, even their skins and their flesh and their dung. And he that burns them shall wash his garments, bathe his body in water, and afterwards he shall enter into the camp. What's interesting here is that this is an instance where they're not called unclean. So they can go back into the camp right away after they wash their garments and bathed. So, that's kind of interesting. I guess so, technically speaking, by the time they bathed in water, it would be sunset. So, you can kind of make the assumption that they would be unclean. They'd be clean by then anyway. So now we're going to move on to the last couple of cross references we have here. All right, so we got Leviticus 17, verse 15. So we're going to go to that real quick. Leviticus 17, verse 15. All right, so and every soul which eats that which has died of itself or is taken of beast, either among the natives or among the strangers, shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean until evening. Then shall he be clean. Okay, notice how it says every soul that has eat what dies of itself. So that is the reason they're washing their garments and bathing themselves in water and will be clean in evening. So anyways, that's the context there. Go ahead, Brother Joshua, before we move on. Go ahead. I saw you had your hand up before we go to Leviticus
Sometimes you have it saying washing towards evening. Sometimes you just have it saying washing in water, and then you're unclean until evening. So I'm wondering if there's a difference or if it's the same, just worded differently. But then I'm also wondering because certain times I've had to wash where it wasn't even close to evening, and that if I didn't wash at that point, I would have already been at work, and
Yeah.
so wouldn't have been able to wash like as it draws towards evening. So thoughts on that?
I wonder, the differences where sometimes it says till evening or at evening, is it in the Masoretic or is it in both? Because I kind of wonder.
I don't remember. That's
Yeah, I would have to, for me to give my thoughts, I would have to look at all the instances to see if it might be a manuscript issue, it might be a translator issue. I would have to
go back
look at that.
in the week.
Because I know even the Targums sometimes differ in that, and then you have like the stupid Jonathan one telling you a certain meters of water to pour on yourself. Oh man, I started cracking up when I read a certain chapter in Leviticus about that with the turtle doves and all that. It said, like 30 meters of water. It was like getting way too specific. I was like, what the heck? But anyway. Yeah, that's an interesting thing you brought up. Yeah, I would like to look more into that at another time to see if that's what that issue is, why it's different like that. I would assume that it doesn't matter. Go ahead, brother.
I'll just write it in the comments.
Okay. I would assume that it's like it doesn't matter when you take the bath. Because you're not clean until it's sunset anyway. So I can't see why Yahuwah in some places would say you bathe at evening, and then others he doesn't give an instruction about it when to bathe. So it's kind of weird like that. Yeah. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
I was gonna say I found the verse if you want to see it. It's Deuteronomy 23:11, because I've wondered that too. Like sometimes when like those dreams happen, obviously I wash right up as soon as it happens, but then obviously sometimes it's like 3 a.m. so I want to go back to sleep, so I put a different pair of clothes. But I feel like that just kind of still stays there even after a bath. So usually I'll take another bath, but I work first shift, so I guess I have like the luxury of like coming home before sundown sometimes, not when it's winter. Sometimes when it's winter, I can't get home in time. So I wonder that as well. But that's kind of like the bad part of having those dreams. I kind of feel like I had to go through 2 outfits, and it like quickly just like, it's crazy.
Yeah, I would say for this case, it seems like you're definitely, it seems to be more specific than other cases when they're ceremoniously unclean. So it looks like, you are supposed to bathe literally at sunset. Says, it shall come to pass toward the evening, he shall wash his body with water, and when the sun has gone down, that's how the Brenton's English Septuagint words it, when the sun has gone down, he shall go into the camp. Oh, no, okay, never mind. No, it's not saying to... Oh, yeah, it is. Never mind. I'm getting confused the way it's worded. Okay. And it shall come to pass toward evening, he shall wash his body with water. I guess that makes sense with the toward evening part, because, right, you would have to wash with your body in water before the sunset, because you want to be clean at that particular sunset. So say you become unclean earlier in the day, the latest you would want to have to do the ritual, mikvah or whatever, you would want to do it like before sunset. So you wait until
anytime before sunset then, right? Like even if it's like I wake up in the middle of the night, that's still before the next sunset.
Yeah, because it just says towards evening. I mean, towards evening is very general too. You could say towards evening could be 2 or 3 hours before sunset. That could be, even that same phrase I think is using Exodus 12 with killing the lamb. The reason it's toward evening instead of at evening is you were eating the lamb too late. So it kind of makes sense with the Septuagint. I know there's like a whole big, argument on both sides about which one's correct, but I like the Septuagint better with the Passover in that aspect because you're having enough time to kill the lamb that same night on the 14th, and you're eating it that same night. If you kill it at sunset, if you think about it, right? I've known this from experience. It took Bobby, our brother Bobby Musab, it took him at least 6 hours to roast the lamb. So if you wait until exactly sunset at that time of year, you're not going to have enough time to eat it that night. And so that's where I think the Septuagint is a little bit more accurate. In instances like this where it says towards evening rather than at evening. Because if the Masoretic, even in this verse, says at evening, you're not going to be clean at evening then if you're waiting until evening. You know what I'm saying? So it would propose a problem there, in my opinion. So especially since almost all the other occurrences seem to indicate that you're supposed to bathe in the water when it's still the present day. Because if you bathe in water after evening, you're still unclean. It went. You have to be cleansing yourself before it's the next day. Yeah. So let me see here. So we're going to move on to Leviticus 21. This deals with the commandments about the dead. How the Levites are commanded not to be defiled by certain members of the Israelite community that pass away. They can't be defiled by regular Israelites that die. Okay, so it says in Leviticus 21, verse 1, Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the priests. Mind you, this chapter is solely for the priests, only for the Levites, the sons of Aaron, and you shall tell them that they shall not defile themselves in their nation, or ethnos, you could say is the Greek word there, ethnicity, for the dead. But they may mourn for a relative who is very near to them. So only what would be near to them in modern terms, Mom? Would that be what is it called? Not even first cousin, it'd be like direct family would be very near to them. Yeah. So for a father or mother and sons and daughters, for a brother and for a virgin sister that is near to one, that is a spouse to a man. I don't know why I got this stupid thing blocking here. For these one shall defile himself. He shall not defile himself suddenly among his people to profane himself. So basically what it's saying is if a regular Israelite dies or a cousin, second cousin, third cousin, not a direct family member of the Levite, they can't go anywhere near that body. They cannot be defiled by the dead of certain Israelites. Leviticus 21, verse 5. And you shall not shave your head for the dead. You got to love how the Masoretic text takes that phrase out, for the dead. So then people that don't understand the context here, they're going to think, oh, I can't get a haircut or something like that. Because I remember back in the day, I used to hear that. Oh, see, you're not supposed to cut your hair. And the Septuagint says it right there, for the dead. With a baldness on the top, and they shall not shave their beard, neither shall they make gashes on their flesh. And again, yes, the Levites shall not shave their beard. Okay? And I would even make the argument for the Levites here, the context of not shaving your beard is for the dead, technically. Neither shall they make gashes on their flesh. This is talking about like a pagan practice of how they would mourn for the dead, basically. They shall be set apart to their Elohim, and they shall not profane the name of their Elohim, for they offer the sacrifices of Yahuwah as gifts of their Elohim, and they shall be set apart. Okay, so you kind of get the point there. I think we'll stop in that chapter because that's kind of the verses I want to go through there. Let's see. Now we're going to go to Leviticus 22, verses 6 and verse 8. Okay, so verses 6. Okay, so Leviticus 22, verses 6, 8. We're almost done, guys. All right. Let's see here. Leviticus 22, verse 6 and 8. All right, here we go. Whatsoever soul shall touch them shall be unclean till evening. He shall not eat of the set apart things unless he bathe his body in water. Now, if I'm not mistaken here, this is talking about the sacrifices. So let me see here. Yeah, okay. So no, this is talking about unclean carcass here. Whosoever shall touch any unclean reptile which will defile them, or who shall touch a man whereby he shall defile him, according to all his uncleanness, whatever soul shall touch them shall be unclean until evening. He shall not eat of the set apart things unless he bathe his body in water. So the concept here is the Levites, they cannot eat of those sacrifices if they're ceremonially unclean. So, yeah. So let's see here. Let's move. Exodus 19 we're at here. Okay, and I'll try to go to specific verses here since we're kind of short on time. I want to go to the exact verses in Exodus 19. I think it's like around verse 5 or something. Priesthood. Okay, here we go. Verse 7, Exodus 19, verse 7. And Moshe came and called the elders of the people, and he set before them all these words, which Elohim appointed them. And all the people answered with one accord and said, all the things that Elohim has spoken, we will do and hearken to. And Moshe reported these words to Elohim. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, lo, I come to you in a pillar of cloud, that the people may hear me speaking to you, and may believe you forever. And Moshe reported the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, go down solemnly and charge the people, and set them apart today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments. Okay, so there's a certain purpose. Yahuwah wants them to be clean for the next 2 days, ceremonially. Okay, and let them be ready against the third day, for on the third day, Yahuwah will descend upon Mount Sinai before all the people. You know what's interesting here is Yahusha rose on the third day. And now Yahuwah here, it's almost like he's foreshadowing the resurrection because he's descending upon Mount Sinai. That's kind of interesting. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Who has ascended but he who first descended?
Yeah, very true. Proverbs 30, verse 4. So, yeah, so this is interesting. It's very interesting. Let's see here. You shall separate the people round about. Take heed to yourselves that you do not go up to the mountain nor touch any part of it. Everyone that touches the mountain shall surely die. By the way, the reason he's probably telling them not to touch the mountain. You got to understand, in a pre-Levitical priesthood concept, this mountain is like the temple. This is like a temple or a sacred place of worship for Yahuwah in Mount Sinai. It's called the Mountain of Elohim, you know. So he's almost telling them the same thing to do what he tells them later on. This is almost like a foreshadowing to the Levitical priesthood. So he's telling, the regular people, don't go up to the mountain, don't touch it. So, yeah. Oh, my goodness. My screen is frozen. Pisses me off. All right. Exodus 19, verse 12. You shall separate the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves that you go not up into the mountain, nor touch any part of it. Everyone that touches the mountain shall surely die. It's kind of like how later on he tells people not to touch the Ark of the Covenant. It's kind of the same thing. A hand shall not touch it, for everyone that touches shall be stoned with stones or shot through with a dart. Whether beast or whether man, it shall not live. When the voices and the trumpets and the cloud depart from off the mountain, they shall come up on the mountain. And Moshe went down from the mountain to the people and set them apart, and they washed their clothes. And he said to the people, be ready for 3 days. Do not come near to a woman. Now, again, we don't know if this was a Sabbath. Okay, this is just talking about in 3 days. For these 3 days, you cannot come near to your wives. You need to be ceremonially clean. And in context, you'll see if you go to the next chapter and read it for yourself, in chapter 20, it's like a marriage. Okay, it's a spiritual marriage between Yahuwah and Israel. They say their vows and all that, the I do's, okay? All right. And it came to pass on the third day as the morning drew near, there were voices and lightnings and a dark cloud on Mount Sinai. The voice of the trumpet sounded loud, and all the people in the camp trembled. And Moshe led the people forth out of the camp to meet Elohim, and they stood by under the camp. And the mountain of Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because Elohim had descended upon it in fire. And the smoke went up as smoke of a furnace. And the people were exceedingly amazed. Sounds of the trumpet were waxing very much louder. Moshe spoke, and Elohim answered him with a voice, and Yahuwah came down upon Mount Sinai, in the top of the mountain, and Yahuwah called Moshe to the top of the mountain, and Moshe went up. And Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, go down and solemnly charge the people, lest at any time they draw near to Elohim to gaze, and a multitude of them fall. So you kind of get the point here. It's all about they can't go up to touch the mountain. They can't go up to Yahuwah. Obviously in a spiritual context, it's talking about that. We as mortal men in our sin, we can't come near to Yahuwah and all that. So anyway, Numbers chapter 5. So we're going to go to Numbers chapter 5, and I'm going to try to focus on specific verses that talk about ceremonial cleanness and uncleanness. So here we go. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Start at verse 1. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, charge the children of Yasharah, and let them send forth out of the camp every leper, everyone who has an issue in their reins, everyone who is unclean from a dead body. Okay, whether male or female, send them forth out of the camp, and they shall not defile their camps in which I dwell among them. And the children of Yasharah did so and sent them out of the camp as Yahuwah had said to Moshe. So did the children of Yasharah. And again, this is stuff that's kind of hard to keep when none of us are living in a wilderness. So, if you're unclean, you're kind of, you got to keep the commands of bathing yourself in water and being unclean till evening. But as far as removing out of the camp, I don't know how you would do that. If you're living in the city like me, that's kind of hard to keep. So anyway, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharah, saying, every man or woman who shall commit any sin that is common to man. See, is this switching gears here? Let me see here. I think this might be switching gears. Yeah, this is talking about offerings and stuff like that. Okay. Test for adultery. Yeah, I think that's it. It just goes on to, I think, the bitter waters chapter here. Yeah, okay. All right, never mind. We got tons of other cross references here. I want to go to Numbers 19. So Numbers 19, verses 7, 8, 10, 11 to 14, and 21 to 22. So I think first we're going to go to Numbers 19, 7, and 8 first. So Numbers 19, laws of purification. Okay, here we go. And the priest, so let's start off actually with, let's see here. And Eleazar took of her blood. This is talking about the red heifer chapter here. And Eleazar took of her blood, sprinkled of her blood 7 times in front of the tabernacle of witness. And they shall burn her to ashes before him, and her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall be consumed. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet wool, and they shall cast them into the midst of the burning of the heifer. And the priest shall wash his garments and bathe his body in water. And afterwards he shall go into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean till evening. And he that burns her shall wash his garments and bathe his body, and shall be unclean till evening. So it's talking about the priest here. And a clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer and lay them up in a clean place outside the camp, and they shall be for the congregation of the children of Yasharah to keep. It is the water of sprinkling, a purification. And he that gathers up the ashes of the heifer shall wash his garments and shall be unclean till evening. And it shall be a perpetual statute for the children of Yasharah, for the strangers joined to them. So anyone that tells you these are not for Gentiles that believe in Messiah, right here. This is for the strangers that are joined to them, that are among them. Okay? So verse 10 is a very tuned verse to highlight for Christians. Very tuned. So, all right, let's go to the next cross reference here. So now we're going to go to verses 11 to 14. Let me see here. After we read these cross references, I'll get to you, Brother Ray. After this, I just got two little cross references in this chapter here. Okay, see here. He that touches the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. He shall be purified on the 3rd day and the 7th day, and shall be clean. But if he be not purged on the 3rd day and the 7th day, see how now it's talking about what would be sin. If he doesn't wash his body in water on the 3rd and 7th day, he shall not be clean. Everyone that touches the carcass of the person of a man, if he should have died, and the other not have been purified, has defiled the tabernacle of Yahuwah, that soul shall be cut off from Yasharel, because the water of sprinkling has not been sprinkled upon him. He is unclean, his uncleanness is yet upon him. Now, this is where I would say this is talking about sin and uncleanness in the context of sin, because now that uncleanness spiritually is upon him because he did not sprinkle his body in water or bathe his body in water. And this is the law. If a man die in a house, everyone that goes into the house and all things in the house shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel which has not a covering bound upon it shall be unclean. And everyone who shall touch a man slain by violence, or a corpse, or a human bone, or sepulchre, shall be unclean 7 days. And they shall take for the unclean of the burnt ashes of the purification, and they shall pour upon them running water into a vessel. And a clean man shall take hyssop and dip it into the water, and sprinkle it upon the house and the furniture and all the souls that are thereon, and upon him that touches the human bone or slain bone or the corpse or the tomb. And the clean man who shall sprinkle the water on the unclean on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and on the 7th day he shall purify himself, and on the other shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water, and shall be unclean till evening. And whatever man shall be defiled and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the congregation, because he has defiled the set apart things of Yahuwah. Because the water of sprinkling has not been sprinkled upon him, he is unclean. So you see what's actually sin here. The sin is not bathing in water. Okay? And it shall be to you a perpetual statute. He that sprinkles the water of the sprinkling shall wash his garments, and he that touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until evening. Verse 22, whatsoever the unclean man shall touch shall be unclean, and the soul that touches it shall be unclean till evening. Okay, so that's it for that. Brother Ray, I think you had a question or comment. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so I wonder two things. So like, I don't think we can really do the sprinkling of water. I mean, we don't really have like a heifer that we can make into ashes. So I don't know how we would keep that. I mean, Numbers 19 used to always bother me when it came to that. And
Yeah,
I guess the only comfort I had is like, maybe there's something Yahusha did that I'm not seeing yet, but I don't know how I would keep that.
I would say his baptism in a spiritual way. His baptism purifies us spiritually. The fact that the mikvah and baptism is pretty much one and the same. It's pretty much like whenever you talk about waters of purification, all that, he fulfilled that by, his baptism. That was like something already in the Hebrew culture with the mikvahs.
So would you say like every time, like if we, like, let's say like there's a dead body or something, I would have to do the baptism again?
You still wash yourself, but the idea of like the red heifer is a little different. The red heifer is like they're taking ashes of the red heifer and putting it into the water. So that's a little different. That's different from regular bathing in water. Like Numbers 19 is just talking about bathing in water to purify yourself. If you don't bathe in water, then you're sinning. And they would in the first covenant with a Torah keeping system in the land, they would stone people that would not bathe in water to be clean at evening. So it would actually be sin not to bathe in water. If you become ceremoniously unclean in general and you don't bathe in water, it's considered sin. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
As far as the red heifer, a lot of that had to do with the Levites. So you can't do a red heifer, anything with a red heifer that you're not a Levite.
Yeah. Yeah, the red heifers even symbolically points to Yahusha, a lot of it. There's been people that have done studies on it, how the red heifer points to Yahusha and all that. Yeah. Yahusha fulfills all those, sacrifices and all that. He fulfills in a spiritual way. He's the waters of purification. He's the eternal living waters. A lot of that stuff spiritually is pointing to him. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
So this is only if like a man dies. It's not like a dead fly or anything like that, right?
Yeah. This is the same concept though, because in Leviticus 11 it tells you the same thing, to bathe in water. Generally, yeah. So, but in this particular chapter, Numbers 19, it's dealing with a dead human body, whether killed by violence, like murdered, or dead bones. Even if you're near bones, if you're in a graveyard, that's why another reason not to go to a graveyard. Then you're gonna have to worry about bathing at evening. Says that if you're by bones, dead man's bones, you gotta bathe in water. So that's just another reason for us to not go to graveyards. I mean, there's tons of reasons not to go there to visit loved ones, because number one, they're not there anymore. Number two, there's demons that go to graveyards and all that. But yeah, that's just an added reason with the ceremonial uncleanness. You would have to deal with bathing in water if you go to a graveyard. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I wonder if that's why Yahusha said, "Let the dead bury the dead."
Yeah, he probably was sick of it. He's probably like, all right, I just had to deal with probably his dad passed away recently too. He's probably like, all right, enough. Let the dead bury the dead. Enough. Like he probably got sick of it. He's probably like, man, I've done enough mikvahs this month. All right, just enough. But I think, all kidding aside, I think also there's a spiritual concept of that. Like, are you putting your dead family before me? Like, let them worry about themselves. I'm more important. Go ahead, Brother Ray.
So the last verse to that is like if that man literally like touches your shoulder, then you're unclean too. Would you say that only applies to a dead body, or would that apply for like a dead carcass of an unclean animal too? I know we can't have.
Yeah, if it touches you, yeah. If the carcass touches you, yeah, it's both. It's both.
No, I meant like let's say, for example, like you touch like a dead pig or something for whatever reason. Yeah. I know you probably wouldn't, but then you like touch me on the shoulder, like, hey, how you doing? And then
like if by mistake, let's say you touch a piece of bacon with your bare hands by mistake, or nudge against it, yeah, you would have to bathe in water and be unclean till evening.
No, what he's asking is that if you touch a dead pig, and then you touch him, obviously you're unclean, but he's asking, would he be unclean because you touched him?
Nah, uncleanness does not transfer like that. No. Like, if you're not touching a dead body, you can't be unclean. I can't make you unclean because I touched a pig's carcass. You could only become unclean by yourself touching that carcass. It doesn't transfer.
The last verse to Numbers 19 made me wonder, because I don't know if that's only for like dead bodies, like humans. Because it seemed like the last verse was like, whoever that person touches, like if he touches you on the shoulder, you're unclean too, or something, you know?
Let me see here, because it talks about if you touch someone that's dead. And it says they shall take for unclean and burnt ashes. Yada, yada. So that's waters of purification too. That's talking about the ashes of the red heifer. But as far as the laws of ceremonial uncleanness, no. Generally speaking, no. There's no command that you would have to wash and bathe in water because I touched a carcass of a pig or a shellfish and then I touched you on the shoulder. No. There's no command that says that. So you can't. The only way I can transfer uncleanness to you is what we read earlier in Leviticus 15. When I have an issue, say I have a copulation issue where it has nothing to do with dreams or anything, I just have an issue, like it says in Leviticus 15, then I spit in your face. That would make you unclean. But I can't transfer ceremonial uncleanness. If I've touched a dead body, let's say, for instance, too, right? I touched a dead body of a human, then I touched you. I could not make you unclean by doing that. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I see what he's asking. So this verse in Numbers 19, this is only where it says, and it shall be to you a perpetual statute, starting in verse 21. And he that sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall wash his garments, and he that touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until evening. And whatsoever the unclean man shall touch shall be unclean, and the soul that touches it shall be unclean until evening. So basically, this seems to have like a transference, but this is only with the waters of the heifer.
Yeah, so that has to do with the ashes of the heifer, which we can't do anyway. So that's kind of, I guess we would say, a moot point because we're not able to keep that until the millennium. So that I don't think you have to worry about that, bro, because the only time that's mentioned is for the waters of sprinkling with the ashes of the red heifer. So,
Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that I don't think you have anything to worry about in the Melchizedek priesthood. There's no red heifers being slaughtered in this land, and it wouldn't even pertain to this land too, by the way, because we're in captivity, so they can't do sacrifices here. So there's no way to actually apply Numbers 19 in this current heavenly priesthood we're in right now. You would need a Levite priest. You would need a temple in Jerusalem. There's a lot of things that we don't have that we would need for to execute Numbers 19. So yeah, but all good questions. I think that's it, and so I think now for good we are definitely ending the study. Sorry guys from earlier. So feel free if you guys have any questions out there in YouTube land, Facebook land, you might see this too. So if you guys have any other questions out there, those viewers and listeners that are still a little confused, please reach out to any one of us. As always, this will be up on the YouTube channel, so please look for the Awakened by Yahuwah YouTube channel. And to all of our brothers and sisters, have a great rest of your Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. And Layla Tube, have